Hello, welcome to the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast. My name is Genevieve, and today's topic is how do we look at when our loved one needs assisted living? What does that look like? What does it mean? And my guest today, Alessandro Insolia, is the entrepreneur behind Bouquet Homes here in the Georgetown area, just north of Austin. And I really want him to talk about how he envisions care for whether it's seniors, someone after a stroke. And assisted living is not a lifetime event. It can be, but it could be something temporary where you need to get extra care, extra attention, those kinds of things. So we'll bring Alessandro up in just a second and we will let him tell us all about his journey into this space.
Welcome to the Listen for Life podcast with Genevieve Richardson. Genevieve is a speech-language pathologist rehabilitating adults with communication challenges after a stroke or due to a neurological impairment. Get equipped with knowledge from experts in the field and professionals you need to know. We'll hear stories and experiences from others who are navigating life with aphasia. So, put your earphones in and take a walk outside. This isn't just a podcast. This is a community, a resource, and a support system. We're in this together. Do life.
Good morning, Alessandro. Thank you for joining me today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I love what you're doing with Bouquet Homes. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be in this space and what inspired you?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a long story. I'll try to make it quick. But so I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. And I ended up going to undergrad pre-med until some things happened with my family that I ended up shifting after a couple of years into business. But as soon as I graduated, I knew that I wanted to continue with my passion for care. So I immediately went out right after graduation, right before I got my first job, and became a licensed EMT. And so that's something that I've done for the last 14 years as a volunteer. And so I'll use it on volunteering on ambulances, but also on medical mission trips that I've been doing at this point for about 20 years. Again, tying into my just lifelong passion for caregiving. So in my time as a volunteer EMT, I did a lot of transfers from people's homes to assisted living centers, or people's homes to hospitals, or from hospitals to the assisted livings, or back to people's homes. And so I got a real feel for a few different things. One, the state of the large assisted living facilities that I was transporting people to. Of course, there are some great ones, but there are a lot of ones that I realized, there's just not enough attention given to the people, that the residents. They can kind of get lost in the numbers of a large facility or in a corporation. But also I saw a lot of people, whether I was picking them up from home or bringing them back to their home against the wishes of the doctors. People really want to stay in their home or in a home-like setting. And there gets to be a point where you're not really able to do some of the activities of daily life that we talk about in my industry, such as cleaning, bathing, dressing, cooking for yourself, all sorts of things that we kind of take for granted, that if you are unable to perform those tasks, your home can really become a place that is not really suitable for you. Mm-hmm. And so in seeing that, in my career journey, went in a lot of different directions, but after 10 years or so, I was able to marry my entrepreneurial spirit with my caregiving passion, and that's how I came up with Bouquet Homes, assisted living and memory care. So what we do is, rather than those large facilities, we either build or renovate and remodel homes that are in neighborhoods, where your neighbors are families, just,
Mhm.
a classic neighborhood style. And the home on the outside will not really look anything different from the rest of the homes in the neighborhood. So when you pull up, people are often calling when they arrive at our homes to say, I don't think we're here. We were expecting an assisted living facility. And I said, well, that's the point. So come on in, and then you'll see how we've remodeled everything to still look as home-like as possible, but to be suited for the needs of our caregivers and the residents so that they can, care for them appropriately.
Mhm. Love
So yeah. And some of the things I touched upon just real briefly, that I had a long career history that kind of wound around and landed me here. So
that.
some of those things, mostly they always involved somehow giving back to the community, because
Mhm.
I didn't want to feel like a sellout after I had left medicine for a business. But so I had a solar energy development plant, a plastics recycling plant, actually resurrected a 60-year-old ski resort up in New Hampshire, and then a lot of construction and rehab. And so the real estate aspect came in handy when I decided on this particular form of caregiving services, and the remodeling and real estate search that comes down to being very necessary when you're opening these types of homes.
I love that path. So, because of that alignment that you've had, that, like you said earlier, you're able to marry all of these aspects of what is meaningful to you, and that you came up with that how you landed here to really support families and really define a new way of care. I did, you may not know this in my history, but I did years and years of home health therapy. So I was in the smaller, like home, like we call them boarding cares in California. And, some are really nice, some are really not. And what stands out to me with your model is the ratio of staffing to your residents.
Right.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about why that is so important and what you think that kind of ideal ratio is?
Yeah. So, like you said, boarding care or residential assisted living facilities, private care homes, these are all different terms for the same thing, more or less. And it varies by state. In Texas, you are allowed to be licensed as a small assisted living if you have 16 beds or less. You mentioned you worked in California, where last I knew they allow 6 beds or less. So it really does, regulations are state by state.
Sure.
And and then I mentioned having worked in passing as an EMT in some of
Mhm.
those larger facilities, and they may have 100 beds,
Oh, for sure.
150 beds. They're really large places. And the what I've been hearing, all the time for the last 3 years, is that those facilities, those large assisted livings, have a ratio of about one caregiver to 20 residents. And some of the things that I would see when I was dropping people off there, or now that I've been touring them, you do see people that have bells that we all have call bells when they need assistance from the nurses or the
Hmm.
aides or what have you, and those bells have been going off for a long time. And understandably, with one person taking care of 20 people,
Yeah.
they may just need to use the bathroom, but one person. So anyhow, in my homes, the first home, the Primrose in Round Rock, Texas, we have 11 beds. We always have 2 caregivers on staff, and about 10 hours of that day, there is a third manager on staff. And she's an LVN, although she just acts as our manager. But so our ratio is never more than one caregiver to five and a half residents. And often it's less than that. And if I'm there, I'm also helping out. And
Sure.
we have third parties that come in to do certain activities. And so it's really one It's much more personalized because you get much more attention. Um, we call it high touch and patient-centered approach. And so given our size, we're able to cater to the residents in a
Mhm.
lot of different ways, whether it's when they enter upon admission, we have lists that they fill out, what were things that you enjoyed most, activities you enjoyed most during your life. And, and families help with these lists too. And,
Sure.
and which of these activities are you still able to do? What are your favorite foods? What's your favorite music? All sorts of things. And so then we cater to that. So, we make our menus once a week, and we get input from every single resident. There's 21 meals that are going to be served, and so we can get somebody's favorite meal served at least once a week. And if it's a crowd favorite, then maybe more than that. We do
Yeah.
of course, work with nutritional guidelines and other things,
All
but
that, of course.
but activities as well. We'll have we have activities every day, and those activities, some of them are just for pure fun, and some of them have specific reasons for why we're trying to improve cognitive engagement or social interaction. But sometimes it's just fun. Somebody's really into a certain podcast, and so we'll have a podcast playing for everybody, and also all sorts of different things. It really varies from arts and crafts to we have a pool, so we'll use the pool, music therapy, pet therapy, all sorts of things.
Love that. When are you
Yeah.
going to get some pet chickens?
That has come up multiple times. I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. We actually
So,
use
so
we
fun.
use an enormous number of eggs. It's a eggs.
Exactly. Yeah. If they can make you breakfast and serve as pet therapy, there is a
Yeah,
whole like certification process in Texas for you can have a professional come in and use the chicken as therapy and help you set up your program. Just so you know.
oh wow, we do that with dogs, are a bit more standard, but I'll look into the chickens. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was one thing I had looked into doing. I have chickens, and it was one thing I had looked into doing a long time ago, and just never really jumped all the way into it because there's a lot that goes into it. Like if they're going to be pets, where they can come in, like anyway.
Yeah.
But chickens are the coolest animal, and I think most people don't know it. But even just outside taking care of them,
Mhm.
what a fun
Oh, absolutely. That could tie in well with gardening, that we do
garden.
some
Yep.
gardening outside and raised beds, the chickens. That would be, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure
with the
people,
right
especially,
coop where you could reach, usually there's a door where you can get the eggs out and stuff.
yeah.
It can be fun. But I just really love this high touch model. Being in home health, we would often go in, whether it's working on aphasia, but often it had to do with swallowing.
Hmm.
Somebody has a swallowing impairment and we have to do some kind of diet texture management. And it was so much easier to do it in a smaller home where I get to talk to the cook, right? Versus a big
Right,
institution where you can kind of get lost. And so I've always had a fondness for the smaller assisted residential homes
right. Yeah,
where you have the same caregivers too, week after week.
that's actually a really good point. And so there are all sorts of studies that show that community, a real sense of community, personal relationships and continued relationships, as well as being cared for by someone you're comfortable with, that all tends to increase people's health outcomes. So,
Yes.
these people are being cared for in very vulnerable situations. And so when there's a new face, all the time, especially if they have some level of memory loss, confusion, that is just that's not going to be beneficial for them. And so our model is, I would say that we have probably the lowest attrition of any assisted living home as far as our employees. We really, that idea of family extends beyond our residents into our employees. We call it the Bouquet Homes family, and not in a cheesy way. I didn't come up with it. It's just what the employees call it, and the
Interesting.
families will also say, this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Is that we're walking into not some facility, but we're walking into a home,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like mom or dad or whoever moved from their home to their new home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do many of your residents stay on for a period of time? Is it temporary? Is it just ongoing?
So
How does that kind of look?
there's two things there. We do offer respite care. Respite care
Mhm.
is, the definition of respite is just a brief period of relief, and that relief is actually for the caregiver, because a lot of people are at home, living with their loved ones who are providing care for them,
Mhm.
and just like professional caregivers, people that are caring for their loved ones can get burnt out too, and so we have a 5-day minimum for our respite care stays, which is lower than the industry standard. But the point is really to lower the commitment barrier, not only to obviously offer the relief to the caregiver, but to lower that commitment barrier so that people can come in. They may be unsure, they may still be at home because they've heard bad things about nursing homes
Right.
or just large assisted living facilities. And so when they come with us just for a few days, it's almost like a trial period. So
Mhm.
they can, see if this might be a good fit for them in the future. And also, as you said, or as I said, provide that relief in the form of respite care. We also have had a fair amount of residents that have come to us after surgeries, and so they've stayed with us, or during their treatments for various illnesses. When they're weaker, they're not able to
Mhm.
perform those activities of daily life at home, and they do need that. They would benefit from the 24-hour care. And so
Yeah.
we do have people that graduate, as we say. We like to, their little graduation party, and they get to go home, and they often come back to visit, just
Yeah.
to visit their friends and the other families that they become close to. But on the opposite end of that, Bouquet Homes, we specialize and focus on type B residential assisted living care. So in Texas, there's type A and type B.
Okay.
Type A is better suited for people that don't require care and assistance in the overnight hours, and
Mhm.
for people that are able to self-evacuate in the case of an emergency.
Ah.
And then so type B, which is what we focus on, what our homes are, that is for the people that I mentioned previously. They're totally suited to live with us,
Mhm.
but you're able to age in place. You don't have to move on to anywhere else if you don't want to, because we're licensed for um, people that need round the clock, care. So overnight staff is always awake, always active, which is not the case in type A. And also we have extensive fire suppression, sprinklers, monitoring systems throughout the home. Even though it looks like your typical house, there is fire suppression throughout the home so that those people that aren't able to self evacuate, whether it's for cognitive or physical reasons, they would be protected. Um,
Love that.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So what you don't see all that you have planned for in your construction and rehab of these homes for this purpose.
Yeah. You really wouldn't be able to tell. I
Yeah.
mean, there are more bedrooms than your typical home, but
Mhm.
I make a point with my background in construction remodeling. I do make a point to really have make sure I call it a nursing ward, and that's what I don't want. That is always my goal, not to have just bed after bed after bed as if you're in a hotel or in a hospital. So there's a cluster of rooms in one area, then some in another area, and you kind of feel, you don't lose that sense of hominess at all.
Right.
And like I said, the fire suppression, that's all. You wouldn't see it unless you were really looking for these, covered sprinklers in the ceiling, and yeah.
So let's talk about some different scenarios about, because I really like to paint a picture so our listeners can understand the different scenarios someone might come into a home. So
Okay.
if someone's had a stroke, they've gone through rehab, and maybe their physical level is such that they need more hands-on care. So that would be something where they could come in for a few months. Home health is coming in. What other scenarios? You mentioned surgery, you mentioned memory care, respite. Let's
Right.
kind of get into a little more of those scenarios.
Sure. So we have had, as I mentioned, we've had some people that come in post surgery and need care for a short period of time. We've had some people come in at a very young age, in their 40s, which is very young in our industry, because of stroke. They've been left quadriplegic, and their spouse needs to continue working. They have children, and so we're there to basically provide all the care that they're unable to provide at home. And also beyond that, we're able to step in and provide that care while leaving the person with that dignity to still have the relationship with their spouse that they had before, and that relationship with their children, so that they don't feel as though they're a burden. They get to enjoy all their time together. They Most of our residents, their families live in a hyper local area, and so almost everybody has visitors every single day.
Yeah.
And so, but all that time is quality time spent, because we are doing all the caregiving that needs to be done. And of course, sometimes people want to step in. We have people who, if we do have a younger person in the home, then their spouse or their parent might, feel the need to provide a little bit of care, just, for their own, you know, just because they want to be able to express their love in that way. And so we don't step in and stop them, but everything is taken care of us by us. Other scenarios, we've had people going through chemotherapy treatment, and so they're in, very weakened state. So they'll stay with us during those months and then graduate, move forward. We we have couples that will move in together. We actually, so of the 11 beds in the Primrose, 7 of them are private. 2 of those rooms are semi-private, meaning, for in our case, 2 beds in each room.
Mhm.
So that's a great thing for couples that are either both at that point where they need assisted living, or
Mhm.
one is and one isn't quite there, but they are just, attached at the hip and wouldn't have it any other way. So they're going to live
Love that.
with their spouse regardless. Also, the semi-private rooms are a bit less expensive, but that's not really why we have them. Another reason beyond just the couples is that there's a lot of research that shows that when people are sharing a room in an assisted living, the person there's always going to be some difference in the level of care needed. And so that person that's doing a bit better will have often a renewed sense of purpose in taking care of, or caregiving, watching over
Yes.
their roommate or their friend. And it might just be they, wake up and check on, make sure everything's okay, or they ring the call bell if, whatever it is, they have this sense of purpose, which, again, research shows having a sense of purpose is one of the main contributors in longevity. And so, and also on the other end, there's that person that might not be doing as well, and they may be used to, having shared a room with someone for the last 40 years or what have you.
Yeah.
And so having that other person, their friend, their roommate, that they feel is watching over them, just adds a little bit more sense of security. Of course, our caregivers, like I said, with a 1-to-5 ratio, we're in the size of our home, is large enough. Of course, it feels nice and open, but there's nothing going on really that we don't know about. So we're still there, but we're able to have those extra eyes on those other residents in the
Mhm.
privates. Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought up that point. We found that in my family, we had a family member in a skilled nursing for a period of time while she was rehabbing. And her roommate, who had been there for years and years, really did look out for her and really helped advocate for her. And it was a really, really neat relationship. And we got to know the roommate when we go visit. And I just think that that's an important part, because we are not meant to be isolated in any way, shape, or form. So that's the other reason why a residential facility like yours can be so beneficial.
Right.
Transitioning out, from a disease, going there for rehab, getting that extra help. Can you guys, if let's say somebody has come in after a stroke, they have home health, but now home health is done. They feel like, home health is ready to discharge them. They're ready to move to outpatient. Is
Mhm.
there like transportation available to get them out for continued therapy or doctor's appointments? How does that work?
So we do our best we work with a lot of different mobile providers, people that will come to our home. And we, at our size, we're not able yet, growth is planned, but at our size, we're not able to provide transportation. But we make up for that with the coordination and scheduling of all
Yeah,
sorts
absolutely.
of we have doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, therapists, all types that come to the home that we have a relationship with.
Great.
And we always support and encourage continuity of care. So if somebody's been working with a third party therapist or what have you, and they're happy with them, then we always encourage them to put us in contact so that we can continue that care at our home. Because, as I said before, that continuity of care with someone that not only knows your health history, but also you feel comfortable with them, you have a relationship with them, that is going to lead to the best health outcomes.
Absolutely. Well, I love your model. I love that you have your life purpose. You're building more homes. Can you just tell us real quick about your plans for expansion?
Yeah, so I'm in the planning or the actual designing phase of two homes in Georgetown. So my current home is in Round Rock, Texas. Georgetown, Texas, just about 20 minutes away. I've found a nice big piece of what was farmland that I'm building the first home on.
Hmm.
Will be 16 beds. And then a second home is in the works to be built next to it. It's a large property so that they can share. Basically, I want the whole backyard to be um, a nice oasis where, now that I really understand the abilities of the majority of our residents, I realize that fountains and running water, that's something that is huge. People love that. That's so relaxing. So I plan to have a lot of fountains and wheelchair walking paths that will be split between the two homes in the large backyard. There'll be courtyards within the home, with trees and fountains that you'll be able to see from within the home. So the caregivers, we can have people that otherwise wouldn't be able to be outside on their own, sitting outside in the courtyard and having a large courtyard. So it's totally the experience of being outside and autonomous, and which
Hmm.
is not something that you often feel in lots of assisted livings, especially those with memory care. But because this is really, the courtyard is enclosed by the home with all windows surrounding it, it really is still safe and provides just a lot of benefit. So that's my expansion at the moment. They're within a close enough pod, they're kind of in a close enough area that I'll be able to have upper management overseeing all three, while each has its own manager. So they'll work together while being separate, because my aim is to never have the feeling of a corporation or a large company. So each home will be semi-autonomous, with me as the overseer. Even though these homes will be next to each other, they will again look as though they'll look like the other homes in the neighborhood. I mean, I get to design these ones, so they're probably going to be a bit prettier than the other homes. But no,
Love it.
they
I love it.
they will, yeah. So they'll fit right in, and so it won't feel as though you're part of a complex of assisted
Hmm.
living.
Yeah.
But we'll be able to serve people in an even better way by combining the resources of 2 homes that are next to each other and 3 that are nearby.
and and just this whole idea of community, and that you're purposefully designing it for the well-being, the mental, psychological, emotional, community well-being of your residents. I love it. You're truly a visionary, Alessandro.
Thank you.
And I'm really happy to know you, and thank you so much for coming on the show today and telling us about your journey and your mission. It's
Thank you
exciting.
very much. And I last thing I want to point out, because I know
Please.
you have viewers and listeners all over the country, that while this is a bit of a lesser developed industry, these residential care homes,
Mhm.
people are really waking up to the idea of how beneficial they can be, and they are. I haven't checked to see that they're in all 50 states and how prevalent they are, but they are popping up more and more. And so your listeners in almost any state will probably be able to find resources like my home available to them. And if not now, in the near future, I would say it's definitely a growing trend as we realize the benefits to people's health outcomes that come from this.
Yeah, and being part of a community, not a ginormous community, a smaller, tight knit, where everybody knows your name, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So wonderful, Alessandro. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I will talk with you soon. And before we wrap up today's episode, I want to share an exciting resource I've been working hard on. It's our How to Help workbook. And workbook is not really a good enough name for what it is. It's really a movement. One thing I've realized doing what I do in speech pathology, working particularly with the chronic aphasia population, is that there's a lot of trial and error and overwhelm and hopelessness, isolation, you name it, with being a caregiver, because there's so much you have to learn and do, and new roles and identities and responsibilities. So, what we've been working hard on behind the scenes is pulling together a framework to help you get to a place in your caregiving journey where you feel in control, where you feel empowered, where we can get rid of that trial and error, where it can take years to feel like you're getting back in control. We want to help you streamline that and get it to happen a lot quicker. So the book is not yet ready, but we are getting closer and closer to it. So I wanted you to be aware of it. How to Help workbook. It's for care partners of individuals with stroke as well as aphasia, and then we'll expand it from there. So, thank you all for being part of the community and being loyal listeners to the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast. Wishing you all an amazing week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen for Life podcast. We hope you feel empowered and supported. Head over to listenforlifepodcast.com to see the show notes with links and information from today's episode. Do you have a topic, a resource to share, or a guest recommendation? Inquiring minds want to know. Let us know in the comments section. Wishing you a fabulous week.